Coming up on Oakdale Update, Brent Peterson with the Washington County Historical Society joins me in the studio. We'll give you some quick tips for having a safe backyard recreational fire, plus we'll preview some upcoming events taking place in the city. Stay tuned, Oakdale Update is straight ahead. Hello and welcome to Oakdale Update. I'm your host, Frank Orsello. This is the City of Oakdale's news and information program about your community. I'm now joined by Brent Peterson from the Washington County Historical Society. Brent, thanks for joining us on Oakdale Update.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about today and we've got about 25 minutes to get it all in. So
Great.
Let's see what we can do. All right, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Well, I'm a fifth generation from Washington County. Family came here back in the 1860s, and I was born and raised in Stillwater. Went to Mankato State University. I have a history degree, and when I got out of college, I started working with the Minnesota Historical Society, and then I started with the St. Croix County, Wisconsin Historical Society over in Hudson. Through all that, I was volunteering also at the Wardens House Museum in Stillwater. Eventually, I got hired onto the staff at the Washington County Historical Society, and 20 years ago I became the executive director.
You did. Is this a county position or what is it?
No, the Washington County Historical Society is a private nonprofit organization.
Okay, so how do you get paid? I mean,
oh, well, we have different pools of funding. We have membership dues, we have earned income like museum admissions, book sales. We also receive gracious grants from some of the foundations in the county area, and donations, of course.
Okay, so obviously you have a tremendous interest in history. How's that going?
Oh, well, we're making history today, like left and right. It's
Yes.
a fantastic time to be alive, to be a historian. But history has always fascinated me. It fascinated my father, grandfather. We always had family history stories at Easter, Christmas, telling us about the old days, and I'm always very interested in that.
So that would be like the Stillwater history?
Well, family history, which would be all over Washington County, starting up in Scandia, where the family came down and settled, and then had a family of 12 kids, so they went all over the place, and so we have quite the extensive family.
Oh, that's good. What about, how did you land the job with the Historical Society?
Well, when I was volunteering there, the admissions and so forth, the Historical Society got noticed more and more and more, and they needed more help instead of just just a couple part-time people. So that's where I got on as being in charge of the library and archives. And as we continue to grow, the position of executive director was created, and I was appointed to that position.
Oh, you were. That's good. Did you say you have a degree in history?
History, political science, and I also have one in law enforcement. So.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't work. I mean, that didn't happen. Nothing happened there, right?
Right. Well, when you get out of college, you look for your first job, and my first job was in history, so that's where I went.
Oh, that's good. I'm a history nut too. I just love everything. World War II is my particular one.
Excellent.
I just love it. And Civil War too, I guess. Anyway, so tell us about the Washington County Historical Society. What is their purpose? What is their goals?
Well, Washington County Historical Society, actually, there was a call for one to be created back in the 1880s, but those calls were never heeded. So it took until the 1930s, 1934, that the Washington County Historical Society was established. And it was established to preserve, collect, and disseminate, or tell the stories of the past. And one of the very first speakers to the new organization was a Reverend Albert Ernst. He was from St. Paul Lutheran Church. His father was the person in charge of the Lutheran missionary.
In what? In Washington County? Or?
In Afton.
Afton.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at that point, he said to the Historical Society, make your objectives clear. Do one thing at a time, do it very well, then move on. And he also said to the organization back in 1934 that you are not doing this for yourself. You are not collecting things to be an antique store. You are not doing this to make yourself happy. You're doing this for the future. And that is what we still do today. We collect the stories of the past, of the present, not for ourselves, but for the future.
What a foresight that man had, huh?
Absolutely.
What was his, what did he do? What did he end up doing? I mean,
he was the pastor at the St. Paul Lutheran Church in Stillwater.
Really?
But he had a lot of things in his background. He went overseas to Russia. He went on the battlefields during World War I as a missionary, all while he was still the pastor of the congregation in Stillwater.
Really?
Yeah. So
what an interesting history he's got, huh?
He was pastor emeritus of St. Paul Lutheran Church for over 50 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Great history there.
So has somebody written a book about him?
Could be, should be, but I don't think so.
Oh, really?
There's been books written about the church and congregation itself, but not about him specifically.
I'll be darned. Okay, so let's talk about the society in general and the things that your goals and things that you're shooting for. And I'll mention these things and then you can elate on them. Sure. You operate 2 interpretive museums.
We operate the Wardens House Museum in Stillwater, and we also operate the Hay Lake School and Johannes Eriksson museums in Scandia, but we also do the programming for the Eder School in Oakdale at the Oakdale Nature Center.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, then you provide educational programs to schools?
Yes, if the schools need a tour, if they're doing specific things like you mentioned, if they're working on some study of the Civil War, we can provide the information on local soldiers who fought at Gettysburg, Antietam, down south in Nashville, that type of thing.
Okay, and then you assist researchers in documentation.
We get a lot of genealogists coming through because Washington County was kind of the gateway of Minnesota. This is where people stopped when they were immigrating. Some of them stayed, some of them left, but they always left their mark in Washington County. So we try with the documents that we have and also any online databases that there are, we help them with their genealogy. But one thing that has really come about more so in the last 5 or 10 years, is people doing history of their land or the history of their houses.
Oh.
They really are interested in who lived there, when it was built, who built it, the architectural styles. So we've been getting a lot of interest in house histories recently.
Well, now is this mostly in Stillwater? Because I mean, they got houses older.
Oh no, it's not only Stillwater. It is a lot of older farmhouses. We get it from Oakdale, Woodbury, up in Forest Lake, down to Cottage Grove.
Really?
And of course, people would buy. There were some significant sized farms back in the day, and people were buying. And now those farms are being cut up into developments. Well, people still want to know, what did they farm? Who owned it? Mm-hmm. That type of thing. So we bring out the plat books, plat maps, and we can find out how big the original farm was. We can find out who owned it, where the original farmhouse was. It's very interesting.
Oh, that is so wonderful. Mm-hmm. That is so great. I just love history. Okay, so then you provide expertise in community, group, conserve collection, and produce exhibits.
Yes. Well, one of our main goals, our mission is to collect, preserve, and disseminate. So we collect artifacts, we collect documents, and we have to organize them so it's easy to access for public. Unfortunately, we can't put things up online yet because we don't have the funding to do the broadband that would hold all of that. But if we put up indexes online so people know what we have, so it's a lot easier for them to come in and say, I'd like to see the Reverend Bosco letters, or I'd like to see these letters, or I'd like to see this group's papers, you know. And it makes life a lot easier to focus their research on a certain thing.
Mm-hmm. You know what, getting back to the, you do history on houses. Stillwater is just loaded with houses from 1800 or
Yep.
if not earlier. So that must be, that's pretty good. I mean,
Oh.
isn't it? I mean, really, how interesting is that?
Well, if the person's house was built in 1886 or later, there are building permits. But anything before 1886, there are
Sure.
no building permits. It makes it a lot difficult.
Sure.
So if they have their deed or their whatever they call the abstract,
The abstract, yep.
we can look back to see who owned the property. The abstract is the history of the land, not the house, because the land is always going to be there. The
Right.
house can come and go.
Right.
But and the tax records are very important as well, because if there's a spike in your taxes, that means something was put on that property. So you know a house, a barn, something was added onto that property. So that's a way you can focus on the date of the construction of the house.
Just as an aside, years ago I lived on Hadley Avenue in Oakdale, and I read the abstract. It went all the way back to the Hudson Bay Company
Yes.
owned the land at one time.
Yes.
How cool is that, huh?
Well, a lot of times when you see these abstracts, people think the first date on the abstract is when the house was built.
Yes.
That's not right, because the first date is when the U.S. government sold the property to somebody, probably a developer. And then through the abstract, it kind of whittles it all the way down to the current legal description of the property. So you got to kind of read those things right. And everybody has a mortgage, and so the mortgage holder is on the abstract,
Sure.
not the person.
Sure.
So you
Sure.
gotta-
I'll tell you, reading that abstract was just what a piece of history that
Oh,
was.
it is. They are fantastic.
Full of information. It even mentioned Indian villages. They were camping on my land, or
something like
where my
that.
house was. Yeah. Oh, just interesting. Anyway, okay. So you investigate and publish county history.
We are a very forward-thinking organization. We do a lot of publishing. We've won awards for our publishing. We've written one great book, I think, is In Their Own Words. It is a history of the Civil War with letters that were from Civil War soldiers coming back to the families in Washington County. These are letters from those soldiers
Oh, wow.
from Washington County, and their experiences of just absolute boredom, disease, the battles, especially Gettysburg. I mean, we all know how the Minnesota Regiment fought and was a very pivotal regiment in this Battle
Yes.
of Gettysburg. And there were people from Washington County in the middle of that.
Yes.
So it is just, this is what we tell the kids when they come to our sites, that, you know, you learn about the Civil War, but you got to remember people from here, your neighbors or neighbors' ancestors fought in that battle. So it is very personal to a lot of people.
Oh, that's so great. Okay, so you collect and preserve cultural artifacts and documents.
Oh yes, from all cultures, Native Americans, we have a lot of different cultures that have come through Washington County. I mean, we're one of the most populous counties for among immigrants.
Oh.
So all sorts of cultures have come here, and you know, there's Scandinavians, there's Germans, there's all sorts of different cultures. We even have a few Norwegians.
You think a couple, one or two?
One or two.
Yeah, you let those people.
Yeah,
Okay, so then you showcase county history through
Yes.
through exhibits and.
Absolutely. We create exhibits for those organizations that might need help. We help with the historic courthouse exhibits when we can. We help with up to Gemmel Garden. We help with other organizations, even the county, the public libraries, that type of thing.
Okay, so then you have some historical markers that you maintain and take care and maintain. And let's start with the Wardens House Museum, which is wonderful.
Yes, the Wardens House. We have a marker in front of the Wardens House, and it's one of our museums. The Wardens House was built back in 1853. It was for the warden of the prison, which was built just to the north of the Wardens House. Over time, it was 61 years that the wardens lived there. There were 13 different wardens that lived there until 1914, when the prison and everybody moved down to Bayport, where the prison still is today.
Sure.
And there were some really good wardens, and there were some really bad wardens.
Really?
Oh boy, We tell a lot of stories about it. The first warden was quite unique. His name was Francis Delano. You might have heard of Delano, Minnesota.
Yes.
Named for Francis Delano, but
Really?
he was an awful warden.
Really?
He was so fed up with taking care of the convicts one day, he let them go. He let them get out. He opened the gates, told them to get out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and the story of the very first convict, because in 1853 there were no convicts. 1854 there was one convict.
Really?
The one convict was someone who was convicted of forging checks. And he was an African American, and they didn't have anything for him to do, so he was just sitting around all day. And so the convict actually asked the warden, "Can I just do something? What can I do?" He said, "Okay, here's a saw. Go outside of the prison and cut firewood."
Oh, we did.
So every day for several hours he'd go, but he'd have to come back by 6 o'clock.
Sure.
Well, one day he was caught up in what he was doing. He didn't get back until 8 o'clock, and the door for the prison was locked. He was locked out of the prison. Then he went up to the warden's house to say, "Hey," and there was nobody there.
Oh, we did.
So he slept in the doorway until morning when somebody came.
Oh my goodness.
So early on, the wardens were not all that good, but later, the last several wardens were very, very good.
Sure. You know what? Speaking of, now you have the jail over at the county courthouse.
Well, yes, the jail is over the county courthouse, but we do not operate the historic courthouse. That
Right.
is a county park.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes.
So they take care of the jailhouse in the basement there,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I've toured that, and I'm sure you have too. Fascinating.
Oh,
absolutely
absolutely.
fascinating. And I think of those prisoners in there with no air conditioning, hot in the summer, freezing in the winter. But that is something very worthwhile to see.
Yes, and remember, the county jail would hold maybe 10, 12 at the most. When we're talking about the prison site, we're up 400 or 500 people, including women,
Oh, really?
at the state prison, yes.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Okay, so then we got the Hay Lake School Museum.
Hay Lake School Museum was built back in 1896. It was District Number 2 of rural schools of Washington County. Up and down the county, there were a total of 79 rural schools, and this one happened to be saved. It was made of brick. Very fancy for a rural school because it has a library. It also has a stage. And after it closed in 1963, it sat empty. Some former students tried to get it going, and then in the 1970s, the Washington County Historical Society took over the maintenance of it and then purchased it from the Forest Lake School District. So now it's a museum to the rural school days.
Okay. So then you have the carriage house over behind the Warden's House, correct?
Yes, behind the Warden's House. We rebuilt the carriage house back in 1996. It's a replica. And in there, that is where we have currently our research center and our research genealogy and all of our papers.
Okay. And then my favorite one is the Oakdale Lake Elmo Schoolhouse, the schoolhouse District Number 12.
District Number 12, the Eater School.
Yep.
It was the Oakdale Lake Elmo Historical Society who did a fantastic job. They found it at the Eater Farm, moved it to the Oakdale Nature Center, restored it. I think it opened in 2004, and it was great. And just a few years ago, the Washington County Historical Society took over the programming of it from the Oakdale Lake Elmo Historical Society. We are usually open 10 Sundays during the year, but I am hoping that we can get more hours out there.
Sure.
As soon as we can.
You know, just as an aside, as you know, I was involved in the restructuring of that building and all that. But when it was put over on the Eater farm, the thing that saved that building was he was having raccoons getting into the building. And so he put a tin roof on that thing. And that saved it because, you know, water is the worst thing in the world.
Absolutely.
And, you know, they weren't going to re-shingle it. So, you know, that stopped the water from dripping in there and destroying everything.
Oh.
That was, that's an aside.
Well, that's a good piece of history to know.
Yeah, okay. So what about membership? What are the benefits for belonging?
Membership, there are several different membership levels to the Washington County Historical Society, including life membership for $1,000. Membership includes all sorts of things, free admission to our museums, 10% off of our book sales, They get the first notice to any events that we will have be holding throughout the county, so they'll have the first chance to sign up. All the members get first chances to do all those type of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we all know, COVID-19 has devastated everything. The whole country is devastated with COVID-19. How has it affected the Historical Society?
It has hurt badly because our museums are house museums. They're small. There is no such thing as social distancing. Even in our large Wardens House museum, the rooms are small, so we have had them closed all year. So that takes out one of those streams of income for our organization. So, plus there's no sales. It has hurt us financially pretty badly. We have had some CARES Act money, the PPP money, that has helped us bridge this gap, but hopefully our foundations will help us out in the fall like they usually do. But we'll have to wait and see how things go.
I mean, you aren't alone in this thing.
No.
I mean, obviously, it's just terrible.
There was a American Alliance of Museums study that was sent out that between 30 to 40% of all museums throughout the country will not make it.
Really?
Yeah, will not make it. They'll close.
Jeez. And that's also restaurants, 40-some%? Or
Yes.
Like last I heard, I don't know.
Even more so, probably.
Probably more so. Yeah, will never open again.
Right.
Oh, geez, it's just devastating.
It is. It is.
It has so changed our society and changed everything.
Absolutely.
In this business of people not going to work anymore, I mean, gosh.
Yeah, well, 100 years ago it happened the same way.
With the flu?
With the flu.
Yeah.
And people didn't know how to do it. And that flu outbreak lasted 2 years until they figured out how to maintain it. So
What was the history of that in Stillwater? Did they get nailed pretty good?
they got nailed good. There was, we have in Stillwater the Lakeview Hospital, which was overrun. An emergency hospital was opened up, which had more beds. And then, like they've been saying, there was that first wave of flu. They closed the emergency hospital, but then about 6 months later, they had to reopen it for that second wave that came through. Now, I'm not sure how many people died, how many people were sick. I don't have those numbers. But it was throughout the county. Remember, one hospital in Washington County was in Stillwater, so people from outlying areas, including Wisconsin, would come over to Stillwater. So there was more people coming than just the Stillwater residents themselves.
You know, okay, so there was a wonderful story in the dispatch about James Carter. James Carter's headstone is with
Yes.
us. Can you give us a quick rundown on what that was all about? That was so interesting.
One of the great things at the Historical Society is we have an internship program. We take college students who have history degrees or art history, whatever, and we hire them, we actually pay them, and they come and learn history from the ground up. I mean, get their hands dirty, literally. And one of the things that we want them to do is to pick a project to do, something that will enhance their career but also help the Historical Society. And last year's intern, Alex Coogan, she saw this painting we have in the Wardens House, and it was of Jim Carter. He was a black man. He was a slave in Virginia. He attached himself to one of the Iron Brigade regiments in Wisconsin, and he followed them back to Wisconsin after the war. The family he was living with moved to Stillwater. Jim Carter became a handyman, did a whole bunch of things, including scrubbing out spittoons in saloons. But he then became the custodian of the Stillwater Armory, and he became beloved. He was well liked. He was very happy all the time, happy just to be where he is. And when he died in late 1913, they held his funeral in 1914. Company K, the militia out of Stillwater, had a full military funeral for the man.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the largest funerals at that time, according to the newspapers. When he was buried, they fired a volley of shots over his grave, the military did. But the one thing they forgot, they did not put a headstone at his grave. And Alex, our intern, found that out. So when we found that out at the end of her internship, it was becoming winter, we were able to work with Fairview Cemetery and we got a stone cut just for Jim Carter and his wife, who was buried next to him.
Yeah.
And that was just placed in a few weeks ago.
That was so fantastic. Now, the thing about it is, there was it said something on there that, you remember what it was? Well, I'll read it to you. Never had an evil thought, nor did an evil deed.
Yes.
And that was misprint, misspelling,
yes.
but they put it on this tombstone, didn't
Yes,
they?
it was. We have a record of part of his eulogy, and that was part of his eulogy during his funeral, that statement. So we thought, instead of talking about him being a former slave or this or that, let's talk about his personality. Talk about the man.
The man.
And that's more important than anything else. And that, I think, shown what his life was like.
Yep. I'm going to read that again. Never had an evil thought, nor did an evil deed. They meant and. It should have been and
Correct.
they put and, but you guys left it in there.
We did.
And that's good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we're running out of time, my friend. But just tell us, if anyone's interested in joining, who do they contact and how do you go about it?
They can contact us online. Our website is wchsmn.org. They can call us at the office at 651-439-5956. They can send up flares if they, anything like that.
Yeah.
We maintain the office still, but we're not open. Keep looking at our website. We are in the process of doing our new Heritage Center. You'll hear more about that in the next few weeks. We finally picked a contractor to do the renovations of the building, and that is going to be an absolute focus, one of a kind type of heritage centers that Washington County will be proud of.
Okay. And real quick, how are you going to finance that?
Well, with donations. So visit our website and click on the donate button, and that'll be fantastic for everyone to help us out.
How much are you going to need?
We're going to need a total of about $4 to $5 million.
Okay. It's not too bad.
No, we've got about $2 million already.
Oh, good. That's good.
But there's still $2 more million to raise in a pandemic.
And that changes everything.
It has, and it's been frustrating, but we keep plugging away.
Okay. Brent, thank you so much for being with us. We're out of time, but you did a fine job. It was just informative. It was really great.
Thank you for having me, Frank. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, thank you. It's time for a short break. We'll be right back with more of Oakdale Update. Stay tuned.
Wash, washy, wash, washy, wash your hands. Scrub them while you're singing the song. Wash, washy, wash, washy, wash. Rub your hands and fingers and the places in between. Using soap and water makes your hands so clean. Wash your hands. Great job, you're almost done. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now dry.
Wash your hands for 20 seconds, just like Elmo.
Welcome back. Backyard recreational fires are a fun way to celebrate fall, but only if done safely. Here are some quick tips.
There's nothing more enjoyable than having a backyard fire with friends and family. If you're going to have a recreational fire, we've got 4 simple guidelines for you to ensure that the experience remains safe and enjoyable for everyone.
Fires must be located at least 25 feet from buildings and contained within a fire ring or device made of non-combustible material like brick, stone, or metal. Fires can be no larger than 3 feet wide and 2 feet high.
The only thing you should burn in your fire pit is firewood. Never burn treated lumber, construction debris, garbage, leaves, plastic, or other waste materials. And never use an accelerant like gas or flammable liquids. When having a rec fire, always have a water source such as a garden hose or a portable fire extinguisher readily accessible. And never leave a burning fire unattended. Make sure that it is either burned out completely or has been extinguished before heading in for the evening.
By following these guidelines, you can safely enjoy your backyard fire. If you do have a fire emergency, remember to dial 911 for assistance.
That's all we have time for this month on Oakdale Update. We leave you with a list of events taking place in the city. For everyone at the City of Oakdale, thanks for watching.